Hot takes, great debates, highlights, basketball. The Houston Rockets have dropped from third in the Western Conference. They're sixth right now. They've lost 5 out of their last 6 games. James Harden has kind of fell into a little bit of a slump. I like the ball that Westbrook's been playing, but it hasn't been leading to wins. That Rockets organization is starting to get some frustrations brewing. Daryl Morey came into the season on thin ice. He made the Chris Paul for Westbrook trade. Obviously, I think that was a good move. I'll get to that more in a second. But with that tweet he sent out about China, I'm sure his ownership is not happy with him. You know, the Rockets are a team that I don't see going anywhere. As great as James Harden is offensively, it's a couple things that comes with the way Harden plays basketball. It's tough to get other guys going. And also, it's tough to see what other guys can do. You can't really trade for guys because Harden really commands the basketball. And if he doesn't got it, Westbrook's got it. So how can I trade Clint Capella? We don't really know how good he is. We know he works in that system. But a lot of teams around the league look at Clint Capella as a guy that can only work with that Rockets team because he gets those lobs in the lane. Here's the thing. If you don't got a James Harden throwing those lobs in the lane, what's the point of going and getting a Clint Capella? It doesn't make sense unless you're running your offense that way in Dantoni's system. Speaking of Dantoni, we'll get to him in a second. So a lot of teams are looking around like, we don't want Capella. PJ Tucker's another one of those guys. He's a 6'5" center essentially. I don't know if a lot of teams want PJ Tucker. A lot of miles on that body. We know he's a sneakerhead, but to me, he only works in Houston. Him and Harden close friends, we get that. I'm not sure if PJ Tucker's trade value is what you think it'd be. Eric Gordon, I think he can still ball. I don't know if the Rockets would want to move off him. You got him at a bargain because of his injury concerns he's had throughout his career. Other than that, who you going to trade for? Daniel House. I like Daniel House, but his stock not that high. Ben McLemore. I like Ben McLemore, but he's been up and down and kind of tossed around in this league. What do you have to trade in Houston? Not a lot. Again, when you run that ISO offense, that 8 seconds or less offense that Tony runs, you don't really get other guys the exposure that they need to increase their trade value. Teams are not crying or calling desperately for Austin Rivers. So if that is the case, if the Rockets don't have a trade, what can this team do right now with them struggling to revitalize this group, get the best out of the group? And here's what scares me about the Rockets. They're losing with 2 of the guys that no matter what, they wake up and play basketball. No matter what, you know Russell Westbrook and James Harden, if they lacing up, you know they giving it everything they got. You can say what you want about James Harden defensively. He's one of the greatest scorers I've ever seen. He tries every possession on offense. Russ tries every possession on both ends of the court. He plays as hard as anyone I've ever seen. Every possession. So if you got 2 guys like that playing as hard as they play and they're still losing and still slumping, what can this Rockets team do? I think there's only one move they can make. You have to fire Mike D'Antoni. Maybe you allow him, since he's going into the Hall of Fame or whatever, maybe you allow him to finish the season. But Russell Westbrook is going to be making $40-something million for the foreseeable future. You already made the trade with Chris Paul now. What's done is what's done. You're stuck with Russ. You can't trade Harden because there's not another Harden out there. A guy dedicated to the city, the organization. No matter what you think of Harden, you have to keep. There's not another Harden out there. And I believe he would be very tough to trade, by the way. Excuse me. So there's not a lot out there. You got contracts that you're stuck with. I don't think anyone wants that Clint Capella deal. You got to fire Mike D'Antoni. You have to bring in a coach that's willing to coach up Harden and Russ. I was watching the Rockets against the Lakers on Saturday night. And one thing I noticed, Harden is trying to do things that his mind is simply not capable of doing. He's great at isolating, and Harden's a super smart basketball player, by the way. But he's super great at learning his body, his position, how to get fouls called. I think what Harden is missing, the next level of his game, is knowing how to face double teams head on. Knowing what should he do in certain situations when teams are setting up with certain matchups with him and letting him go ISO. He needs to learn certain things defensively as well. Who's going to teach him this stuff? Russ ain't the greatest defender alive. Russ has made a living on playing passing lanes. I think Harden needs a new coach. It would be great if you could get either one of those ESPN guys, Jeff Van Gundy or Mark Jackson, out of retirement. But they seem stuck at ESPN. I don't know what defensive specialist out there right now that you could go get. I know the Rockets need one desperately. Look, I'm looking at Chris Paul right now with OKC. He's having the time of his life playing basketball. And by the way, the Thunder are only about 3 or 4 games out of passing the Rockets. The Thunder weren't expected to make the playoffs. Remember, the Thunder was supposed to be a team selling at the deadline. Now the Rockets look like they should be the team selling at the deadline. I'm not going to blame Daryl Morey for trading Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. I don't think that's fair. Chris Paul is taking care of his body in ways that he just wasn't doing in Houston. The Rockets didn't want to give up on Chris Paul, but CP3, he obviously a couple years ago, he missed Game 6 and Game 7 with the hammy injury against the Warriors. That cost them. They was up 3-2 in that series. And then outside of that, in the regular season, Chris Paul missed too many games. So I'm not faulting the Rockets for trading Chris Paul. He didn't commit the help. I don't know if it was some of that down south eating he was eating in Houston. Maybe the food's poor in OKC right now. That's why he's healthier now. He got no choice but to take care of his body. I don't know. But I'm not going to blame the Rockets for that. But I will blame them for giving Dantoni another year or two. You got to get a new coach in there. Harden's getting older. The more time that passed by, the tougher it's going to be to get this guy to commit to defense and commit to seeing the game a different way. I think he needs a different set of eyes on the sideline to help him see the game differently. That's the next step. Rockets got to do something. I think you got to fire Dantoni. You into sports, we got you. NFL news, I got you. NBA news, NBA highlights, NBA full coverage, feature stories, all that great stuff, I got you. We even got a little bit of Madden and 2K mixed in. Subscribe to this platform, and I got you. More quality content on the way. Subscribe.